The following episode contains approximately 815 spoilers for all seasons and episodes of Lost. You have been warned. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever the fuck you are in the world. Welcome back to another episode of Lost the Plot, the podcast where two Irish lads talk absolute shite about ABC's hit network show, Lost.
Yeah.
Joining me once again this week, you all know him and love him. Dave, say hi.
Hi, Ada. How's it going? How are you this week?
I'm in shite.
Oh.
Absolute shite.
Any particular reason?
Yeah, listeners, that's right. I'm not wasting any time before I start fucking complaining. Man, I have had such a health complaint for the last week.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, well, before we get to that, maybe we should announce the occasion first, if that's okay with you.
No, fuck that. Fuck that. Hold on, just grabbing a can.
Yeah, speaking of grabbing cans, this week is our St. Patrick's Day episode. We would be remiss if two Irish cunts didn't get absolutely trashed to record his Paddy's Day special. I think we promised it vaguely before, but the two of us are on the booze tonight. Ada, what are you drinking yourself?
I am armed, locked and loaded with a couple of sticks of dynamite within my grasp.
You went all out. You forgoed. Forewent? What's the past tense of forego?
I think it's forewent.
Forewent, all right. You forewent the usual Dutch Gold, unofficial sponsor of this podcast, and you fucking dished out for the Heinos.
Do you know what? It's because they don't have the fucking Dutch Gold in the store across the street from me.
Fucking must be Protestants.
I'm absolutely disgusted. Now, having said that, they are literally just across the road from where I live. If I were to go an extra 30 seconds around the corner, I'd easily be able to get them. But anybody who knows me knows that I'm a lazy cunt.
Come on, it's a Paddy's Day special. We're not going to put that much work into it, though.
Exactly. What about yourself? What are you doing?
Well, I tell you, I came home and I had three 3.5% cans of a local lager lying around, and I decided to sort of pre-game with those before we started recording. So, the pandemic has fucking destroyed my tolerance, man. I'm actually feeling like not quite tipsy, but almost tipsy, between merry and tipsy from that. But for the actual recording, I've cracked out. I decided, I was thinking like, I could get some Guinness or something because it's Paddy's Day, but then I was like, what kind of lost the plot drink could I have? And I decided to get a drink based on a callback to one of our episodes that no listener is going to remember, that you and I will barely appreciate. But do you remember
fucking remember it itself? What are you on about?
Do you remember the scandalous episode where I said that I liked red wine chilled?
Oh, yeah.
I chilled a fucking carton of red wine.
Oh my God.
Now, this red wine is called Kangaroo Aussie. Kangaroo. It's an Australian wine. I like to say that I bought it because, it's like a reference to the flight taken off from Sydney. I bought it because it was €7. That's the reason why I bought it.
Hold on. What volume? How much is in it like?
There's a liter of it. It's like a carton, a bit like a milk carton with a screw top. You
got a liter of wine for £7. That is not bad.
Not bad at all. It's not bad wine either. Like, honestly, for a €7 wine, it's 13.5% alcohol. Is delish, and I'm enjoying it out of a beaker here. I'm drinking it from a measuring jug, a 1 pint measuring jug, because I was drinking my cans out of that before. My cans were rendered unusable by a whole other story. Basically, I put them in the freezer and I forgot about them, so I couldn't set them down. But my landlord, who is also a housemate, is practicing Muslim, so he doesn't exactly have any pint glasses lying around.
Funny you mentioned practicing Muslims. That's almost foreshadowing for the coming episode.
It's somewhat related to this episode, yeah. But yeah, so I've ended up drinking this wine out of a pint measuring beaker, and I couldn't be happier, to be honest.
Is it just me, or is it kind of funny that we're getting hammered on an episode that seems to center around a bunch of individuals who are sworn off drink for their religion? I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, I mean, the irony is delicious.
Anyway, there's a time and place.
That's their culture, and this is ours. Ado, you were going to tell us about some some pain you had during the week?
Long story short, I'm officially getting old. I put my back out about a week ago.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. I didn't, I don't know if it's pulling a muscle or straining a muscle or whatever, but the way it happened is the stupidest shit ever. So my mother texted me. She said she's coming up to the city. Do I want to meet up for a cup of coffee or something? I was like, fuck yeah. I want to hang out with the mom. I want to go get a cup of coffee, get a bit of lunch with her, a bit of a catch up.
Continue not to tell her about the existence of this podcast.
Correct. And because fuck knows I do not keep in touch with her. I don't keep in touch with any of my family. I'm so bad. I just live in my own little bubble of influence.
Dude, I got a voice message from my dad today. And I was like, I looked at the last message. That last message was sent 11th of January. It's been almost 2 months since I've spoken to my dad.
But anyway, mother was coming up and we decided to go into, I'm going to give a shout out to this place. Actually, we went into a lovely little place called Kay's Kitchen in the Jervis Shopping Centre in Dublin, right?
Shout out.
I say shout out, right? It's a really nice little place. They do really good carvery, sandwiches, wraps and shit like that. But every time I've been there, it just seems to be populated by the same type of clientele. Basically, middle class fucking elderly white Irish women, basically.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it sons with their mothers? I mean, it doesn't sound like it's far off. Here's the question, though. Do they serve Dutch Gold?
No, they don't serve Dutch Gold. They don't serve any alcohol, I don't believe. Few soft drinks. So anyway, we sit down and the server is about to bring over our coffees. And I decide, no, I'll go up and I'll go get them. So I get up out of my chair.
Wait. Sorry, I have to stop you there again. Like, I'm all for politeness, but that is her job to bring them over. She wouldn't have work if everybody was getting their own coffees.
We were sitting a fair distance away. There was a lot of people in this cafe and there was not a lot of staff. So I was like, no, I'll go over and I'll bring them to the table myself.
All right, good on you.
But long story short, I take the coffees, I come over and simply bend slightly just to put the coffee down on my mother's side of the table. And all of a sudden, my back just went.
Oh,
I don't know if it was like a slipped disc or I pulled a muscle. I don't know what the fuck happened, but that was the beginning of the next 4 days of fucking agony.
Getting old rules mentally. I'll say that. I don't mourn the loss of my young mind, so insecure as it was, but physically it fucking sucks. You start to understand more and more why they say youth is wasted on the young.
I'm telling you, because younger people just don't know how good they have it. Like, I know full well why I have a bad back. I made a career out of lifting suitcases for like 50 years, right? There's no mystery behind this. Everybody listening, trust me when I say I have done more manual handling courses than you've had hot dinners. But the thing is, all these manual handling training courses do the same shit. They train you how to stand and pick up a fucking box with paper in it. If you're unlucky, it'll be an empty box if you're lucky. And then you got to put it on the table. And then you got to push it across the table. Then you got to pull it back towards you, pick it up and put it back down safely. Keeping the back straight, bending the knees, feet shoulder width apart, all this shit. You got to hold it with the right fucking grip, opposite corners, all this nonsense. But they do not train you how to lift all the different shit people will bring with them on holiday that I've had to do as a job. Suitcases that have handles on them in, I'm not going to say bad places, but you pick up a suitcase by its handle, that's weighing you down on one half of your body. What are you going to do? Carry it with the other hand as well? Then the suitcase is in front of you. You can't move your legs.
The irony here is that I have a bad back from a working life mostly spent on desk jobs. Sitting is the new smoking, as they say. I have a recommendation for you. I took this up in lockdown last year and my back problems disappeared. And whenever I fall off it, my back problems come back. Fucking yoga, man. Have you tried it?
Fucking yoga?
I'm telling you.
Who the fuck are you? John Burko?
I don't know who that is. I do yoga every other day. If I can. I miss days a lot. I did it today. I did 10 minutes today. I do it anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour, depending on how much time I have. And my back troubles disappear when I'm actively doing it. If I fall off the wagon, which I do every now and again, I get busy, I start to get back problems again from sitting down. Now, to be fair, this is good for back problems based on sitting a lot. I don't know how well it'll do for back problems related to lifting heavy objects, but something to consider. I find it really relaxing, really rewarding, really enjoyable. Recommend it.
Okay.
Took it up in lockdown last year. Never looked back. I say last year. It was 2 years ago.
Yeah, I know. Time is a whole different thing now since the pandemic, right?
Barely exists. Funny you should tell the story, by the way. This isn't a story, just a really quick comment. You said it's a sign of getting old. I found my first gray hair this week.
Fuck off. No way.
I should correct that and say my girlfriend found it. I've had a couple of false alarms in the past. Wait, no, she didn't find it down there.
I was going to say upstairs or downstairs.
Nah, the left side of my head. Do you know what? I think you have gray hair here as well, based on last time I saw you, but it's around the temple, and I feel like that's like a really tasteful place to gray. I think a bit of salt and pepper on the temples can look really good.
Oh, dude, you have not seen me in a while then.
I saw you in December.
My hair has gone gray as fuck.
It's got streaks through it, but I think you wear it well. I'm not just saying that. Like, I think it suits you.
I'm telling you, I go to the barbers, I get my hair cut. All the hair on the fucking ground is gray. And yeah, I look in the mirror at a distance. It's still dark. But then if you look at it up close, it's like, nah, there's a lot of gray in my hair.
Well, it suits you. Distinguished for sure.
I remember when I started getting gray hairs. Like, I mean, I always kind of had like a little bit of gray hair for like the last, I don't know, 5 years, but it really ramped up around the same time as my acid reflux problems. And I think I mentioned this on the podcast before. I went to the doctor and the doctor was like, well, when did all this start happening? I was like, oh, it was like October of this particular year. And he was like, okay, well, did any major life incidences happen around that time? I said, no, I mean, my marriage ended that month, but no, other than that, like, no.
Nothing major.
Yeah, nothing major. Dude, my fucking divorce date is coming up April 1st, right? I mentioned it 2 weeks ago on the podcast.
I think we might have cut that bit though.
Ooh. Oh, did we not?
Maybe not to mention, I can't remember. There was a long sequence afterwards that may have made it into last week's outtake episode. Who knows? Where we discussed it. But I think maybe the date wasn't cut though. I don't know. I can't remember.
Well, anyway, just to bring people up to speed, I am officially getting divorced on April 1st, apparently. That's when the court date is set. All the paperwork's been done. And you know what? I'm so excited. I'm going through my suits and I'm picking out which one I want to wear. I want to show up on the day. Sunglasses, a cane, big fancy coat, pimp walking in and out of that courthouse. I am so happy about this shit.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And it's so funny because that is the appropriate response. So many people don't know what to say when I tell them I'm getting divorced. They're just like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm like, no, this is exactly what I want. This is a great fucking thing. Well, just before I go any further, I'm just going to very quickly explain the John Burko reference.
Oh, please do. Yeah. Haven't a clue who that is.
When you said you'd taken up yoga, John Burko was Speaker of the House of Commons in Great Britain from 2009 to 2019. And the only reason I know who he is I have done binge watches of edited together YouTube clips of this guy, right? He's basically the guy that sits there and goes, "Order!"
I think I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah, very distinctive voice, as a House Speaker should have.
He has completely changed how people hear the word order in their heads, right? But basically, if anyone was getting particularly out of line, one of the things he'd always say to them was, you should take up yoga. You know, he always recommended yoga to people. It was bizarre.
Maybe it subtly got in there because I took it up in 2020. And if he quit in 2019, there's a chance I absorbed it at one point.
But I believe that is enough about that, especially because I'm emotionally allergic to talking about British politics. So on that note, I think it's time to do a little bit of listener email.
Now, Ado, little peek behind the curtain here, but I checked the Gmail inbox today, and as far as I could see, there was no more listener emails. So,
well, that is because you ain't looking hard enough, son. You're only checking the inbox.
Oh, dear.
You are only checking the inbox, as is holiday tradition. We did this on the last special holiday. What was it?
Christmas, I believe. Yeah. I mean, maybe you can count Valentine's Day, but we didn't do it then, so let's not count that.
But I decided to delve deep into the bowels of our spam inbox.
Fuck yes. Love it.
And even from the opening of this, you know it's going to be good.
We should get Noel to make a new theme song for spam emails.
Just like a corrupted version.
Yeah, I was going to say a glitchy version. Anyway, go on. I want to hear this.
All right. So this begins with greetings, my dear.
Oh, all right. A correction, dears.
Yes, dears. There are two of us. We are not one person. Although I have heard that some people who don't have English as a first language have difficulty telling us apart.
Well, we had an American listener write in, right? And actually, was he American?
Ooh.
I just assumed, but I don't actually know.
Do you know what? It's a fair assumption based on our statistics, which you will have heard in last week's clip show episode, that we have most of our listeners in the United States.
In the United States, correct.
So safe assumption to make. But anyway, this email, written specifically for us and sent only to us, I'm sure, begins thus. Greetings, my dear. This letter might be a surprise to you, but I believe that you will be honest to fulfill my final wish.
Oh my God. Already it's the dramatic tension has skyrocketed.
I bring peace and love to you. It is by the grace of God I had no choice than to do what is lawful and right in the sight of God for eternal life and in the sight of man for witness of God's mercy and glory upon my life. My dear, I sent this mail praying it will found you in a good condition of health, since I myself am in a very critical health condition in which I sleep every night without knowing if I may be alive to see the next day.
All right. Admit it. You composed this yourself while you were recovering from your back pain.
Dude, you think I could string words together like this?
This is incredibly dramatic. This is like, already I'm turned off. Whatever the target audience is for this kind of spam, I'm guessing it's older people. This is not working on you, boy. I guess we're not that old after all.
No, but the style of writing is meant to be gripping. But anyway, the email goes on. I am Angelina John Van, a widow suffering from long-time illness.
Fully thought you were going to say Angelina Jolie.
So did I. I have some funds I inherited from my late husband, the sum of $11 million.
Rest in power.
My doctor told me recently that I have serious sickness, which is cancer problem.
Oh, damn. Well, if you put it that way, if you forgot all the rules of English grammar, then it must be bad.
Yep. There was actually more earlier in the email that I just corrected as I was reading it.
I was gonna say, because she was so well spoken beforehand. Okay, yeah, that explains a lot.
No. The level of grammar has definitely decreased. There was just like one, maybe two small errors.
It's because the cancer is getting worse as the seconds go by.
It's deteriorating by the
cancer
word.
Problem.
But the email goes on. What disturbs me most is my stroke sickness. Having known my condition, I decided to donate this fund to a good person that will utilize it the way I am going to instruct herein.
Cancer, a stroke. If she has AIDS as well, then bingo.
It continues, unfortunately. I need a very honest and God-fearing person who can claim this money and use it for charity works, for orphanages, and good justice, and help to the poor, needy, and widows, says the Lord, Jeremiah 22:15-16, and also build schools for less privilege that will be named after my late husband, if possible, and to promote the word of God and the effort that the house of God is maintained. Well, I'm going to pause there and just say, Angie, I don't believe you gave us your husband's name.
Holy run-on sentence, Batman.
I know, right? I was having difficulty parsing that. But I move into the final paragraph. I do not want a situation where this money will be used in an ungodly manner. That's why I'm taking this decision. I'm not afraid of death, so I know where I'm going. I accept this decision because I do not have any child who will inherit this money after I die. Please, I want your sincerely and urgent answer to know if you will be able to execute this project, and I will give you more information on how the fund will be transferred to your bank account. May the grace, peace, love, and the truth in the word of God be with you and all those that you love and care for. I am waiting for your reply. May God bless you, Mrs. Angelina John Van.
You know what? Maybe it was simply the power of your recitation, but Angie fucking stuck the landing there. That I do not fear death. I got fucking goosebumps, dude.
So, small announcement to our listeners. Next season of Lost the Plot brought to you by Mrs. Angelina John Van. I'm gonna hop on this shit.
We're in the big bucks now, baby.
Hang on, I'm gonna send her my bank account details. I gotta get on this shit, man.
Angie, thank you so much for writing in. We will seriously consider your offer. Now allow me to take another sip of the blood of Christ.
I mean, funding a podcast is definitely a godly endeavor, right?
Especially ours. I mean, Lost has a lot of religious, specifically Christian overtones. You know.
We are doing the work of the Lord.
We're doing God's work.
So Angie has not told us what part of the world she's emailing us from, but wherever it is, I think it's time we left there. Dave, what do you think? Should we do it?
I'm getting drunker and I've never been more ready.
All right, well, grab those cans, pull yourself up, and let's go.
Whoa! Back to the island.
All righty, so this week on Lost the Plot, we are reviewing Season 1, Episode 21, The Greater Good.
The Greater Good.
Thank you, because I've got a rule this episode, Dave.
Oh?
Yep. In honor of my favorite movie of all time, the title of this episode cannot be said unless one of us repeats it. So if I say The Greater Good, you say
The Greater Good.
Thank you.
Shit, yeah. I remember that reference now. That didn't even occur to me, obviously, because I don't stand that movie as much as you do. But yeah, that's a reference to Hot Fuzz, right?
That is a reference to my favorite movie of all time, Hot Fuzz, where the phrase "the greater good" is said multiple times, but never without someone repeating it.
Nice. Okay, I will keep that in mind.
So this week on The Greater Good,
The Greater Good.
Thank you. We have a brand new director. Now, this episode was written by our boy Leonard Dick, right?
Yeah, I noticed that in the credits. I was like, there's some strong contenders for favorite writer-director name. David Fury is obviously up there. Jack Bender, pretty funny in certain ways. Leonard Dick, come on, man. Hall of Fame name.
Yeah, I mean, last time we saw him was In Translation, which I believe was his first.
Yeah, great episode.
However, this week, this episode is directed by David Grossman.
David Grossman. Wow. Another fantastic name.
Grossman. From what I can tell, he has only directed this episode of Lost. Before Lost, he directed episodes for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, CSI, Malcolm in the Middle. And then after Lost, he was like executive producer for Desperate Housewives, and he directed like over 30 episodes for them, right? That was like his big project.
Yeah, that printed money for him.
Lost was just an entry on his CV, practically.
Damn, Malcolm in the Middle. You remember that show, right?
Holy shit, do I?
I rewatched the first season of that show during lockdown. That show holds up. It was so fucking good.
Man, do you know who doesn't remember Malcolm in the Middle? Fucking Frankie Muniz, apparently.
Because he's pumped full of hormones the entire time.
No,
anti-hormones, I guess.
No, supposedly, as it goes, he suffered some sort of a head injury and doesn't remember anything from his childhood.
Whoa, from his race car driving?
Yeah, I think so. Now, I could be wrong on that. I did read something recently where Frank Muniz did come out and say that, no, that's a myth. He does remember a lot of stuff. But apparently, yeah, it was a huge thing on the internet for a long time that Frankie Muniz had no memory of ever filming Malcolm in the Middle.
That's a hilarious urban myth. That's amazing. Frankie Muniz to me is always one of those guys who just did it right. He retired at like 22 and now he just drives fucking race cars for the crack.
And he's a drummer.
Yeah.
It's the most bizarre thing. Like, dude's got a band.
He should join Macaulay Culkin's band. How sick would that be? The Pizza Underground.
Holy shit, I've never heard them before. Are they any good? What are they like?
Do you know what? I don't think I've actually listened to them either. I'm just aware of them. They're a Velvet Underground cover band, but they change all the lyrics to be about pizza.
I fucking love that kind of shit.
We should check them out after this episode.
So, as I said, this episode, The Greater Good,
The Greater Good,
directed by David Grossman, written by Leonard Dick, opens up with a previously on Lost. We've got Saeed fucking around with his transceiver. We've got Boone's injury, Locke's disappearance, once Boone is brought back to the caves. Boone revealing something about a hatch to Jack. General Locke being schemy in Jack's eyes. Saeed and Shannon making out. Jack breaking the news to Shannon that Boone's dead. And it brings us into the beginning of our episode. We are in the caves.
Let me just say really quickly about the previously on Lost. I know this is just Giacchino fuckery, that it's total emotional manipulation, but this previously on Lost is hype.
It's so good. Because we ended on a high point last time. We literally had life and death in the last episode. The birth of a new character, Turnip Head, and the death of an old character, Five.
I know what you mean. And we are right into the home stretch now. You can just tell from the music that they are trying to hype you up for this is it, boy. End game, end times. Let's fucking go.
And I've actually got a comment about the music at the end of this during what I guess has always traditionally been the trivia section, but it's going to be slightly different this time, right? And I'll talk more about that when we get to it.
You have not told me about this even off air. I am fucking pumped.
Well,
let's get to it.
No. It's still going to be the trivia section, but comes with a caveat. And as I said, we'll discuss when we get to it.
Because it's the Paddy's Day special, you're going to call it like the Triddly Eye section or something.
Officially stink-eyed, Dave. Officially stink-eyed.
No, I didn't think it could happen to me.
Get in the sin bin. This episode opens up with Shannon just generally stroking Boone's face. It's kind of the aftermath. Boone's dead. Saeed has no fucking clue what to do with himself except figure out how to appear appropriately sad.
Yeah, Saeed looking like a sad face emoji over there.
and he does what any red-blooded man could think to do. Just go over and say, do you need anything?
yeah, anything I can do for you. A question that I feel like the older I've gotten, the more useless I feel like that question is. I used to think it was helpful, but I don't know. Whenever my lady's upset and I ask, is there anything I can do? There's usually very little I can do.
Yeah, just imagine you're incredibly fixated on a sad situation and someone asks, is there anything I can do for you? No, you're not going to be able to think of anything.
But Saeed rocks here. Maybe not in Shannon's eyes, but he tries to sort of big Boone up. And it did make me realize that Boone did have kind of a hero's death. We were so focused on Jack in the last episode that maybe we forgot to appreciate that. Saeed mentions how he didn't want to waste all the antibiotics on himself and shit like that. Dude made a sacrifice.
Absolutely. But narratively speaking, he was a useless cunt. But I just wanted to throw out a little bit of advice, right? If you have a particular lady friend in your life, and I only say lady friend because I'm a heterosexual male who's only ever been with women. So, and I know this works with most of the women I've known, those I've been in a relationship with and those I've only been friends with. However, if you've got a sad one and you want to do something, gather in, listen close, scooch closer, children, right? Stick the fucking kettle on. Make a hot beverage. If you know their hot beverage of choice, make it. Because women, it doesn't matter how sad they are, their fucking family could be massacred. As long as they've got a hot beverage to wrap both hands around, close their eyes and breathe in and go, like they're posing for an Instagram shot, cheers them right the fuck up. Nailed it.
If they've got work in the morning and it's past noon, maybe don't make them a coffee.
Do you know what? I'm actually going to agree with you. That is some solid advice right there.
Because then not only will they be sad, they also won't be able to sleep.
Well, I mean, decaf coffees are a thing. If you've got one of those fancy fucking, I've seen them. I've got one. Nespresso machines that you can buy fucking, what do you call it? Like pumpkin spice pods for, and you make it with like oat milk with a spoonful of sugar in it. I'm telling you, if you've got a frother as well for milk, bruh, if you don't, just make tea.
I'm not going to disagree with you. The only thing I take issue with is we have to bleep that product name because they do not sponsor this podcast.
Yeah, fuck them. Part of the Nestle company stealing water out of children's mouths in Africa. Shower of bastards.
All right, Rick Sanchez.
But anyway, so yeah, if you have a sad woman, make her a cup of tea. I'm telling you, it's step one. Step two, maybe buy some groceries for them, right? But anyway, I'm not here to tell you how to live your life.
Yeah, step 2, figure it out yourself from there.
But Saeed actually does a really good job here because even though he's a bit of a useless prick and he can't really do anything, I mean, her brother is dead. What could he do? He does start telling her about, a conversation he had with Sun, where Sun said he did kind of die a hero's death. He knew the situation he was in. He actively did not want Jack using up antibiotics on him. He knew he was a goner and he was so brave. And I mean, fuck, like that's the right thing to say. It's probably not going to have much of an impact now, but in the long run, that could really help Shannon, just those thoughts about her brother. So anyway, we move on to a flashback.
I was going to say, it almost seems insensitive to Shannon's grief to make this a Saeed episode. It's like Shannon's sad, but hey, what's going on with this dude?
Well, I think it works really well to push the story forward, because if we just done like a Shannon episode with flashback memories of Boone, it would have, mired us in just memories of Boone.
Nah, I agree narratively. I don't know. I thought it was funny. You could be forgiven in the first scene to think, okay, we're going to focus on Shannon's grief in this episode. And then the writers are like, now what's going on with our boy Saeed?
No, don't you worry. Sit down, all right? I'm going to be talking a little bit more about Shannon later on. But this is the perfect moment during Shannon's grief for Saeed to just kind of cock his head to the side and look up at the sky and start daydreaming about that time he was arrested at Heathrow Airport, right?
Yeah, we've all been there.
Now, we know it's Heathrow Airport because there's a tannoy announcement. There's a tannoy announcement. Sorry, I've been drinking. In the background that they're in Heathrow. I forget what it says. It's probably something like, we're in Heathrow, all right, love. Saeed is detained by some authorities and he's brought into, I don't know, like an interrogation room or just a small little office anyway, where we find out he's basically being interrogated by the CIA, essentially, or some intelligence agency, because there's an American lady talking to him and an Aussie dude.
I think it's the CIA along with whatever the Australian intelligence agency is called.
Yeah, and something that this episode does is it doesn't outright ignore the whole post 9/11 Islamophobia hysteria that was rampant during the time this show came out, but you're definitely feeling it, like Saeed being pulled into an interrogation room at an airport.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was thinking, I was kind of pulled back and forth throughout this entire episode about whether this episode is critical of the CIA or not. I think they somewhat are. They're somewhat sympathetic to...
Well, hang on. Why don't we actually find out what the fuck they want with them before we start criticizing?
Yeah, you're right. Go right ahead. Right? Go right ahead. Bit of casual extortion.
So I'm just going to run through it, right? Because I haven't the patience or the sobriety to do anything else. They basically say to Saeed, hey, there's an old college buddy of yours who is now in a terrorist cell, and we want you to infiltrate it using him as your link. And you're going to fucking help us. And Saeed pretty much throws his hands in the air and he's all like, well, fuck you, gives him the finger. Why would I do that? And they say, well, we know where Noor Abed Jazim is. We know her whereabouts. Because they say to Saeed, we've been tracking you, dude. You've been going from place to place to place. And a man only does that for two reasons. One, he's running from something. Or two, he's looking for something. And we're betting you're looking for your fine piece of ass, right? This Nadia girl, Noor Abed Jazim. And they've got him figured out. That's exactly what he's looking for. So they say, you infiltrate the group, the terrorist dudes, and we'll tell you where she is. Now, we assume he goes with it, but we come out of the flashback. We're in the jungle, and we've got Kate. She's trudging through the jungle. And she's like looking for something. She finds what I can only describe as like a piece of cloth with a bit of blood on it. It's like a bandage or something. But then Jack stumbles in, acknowledges her presence, and then just continues walking.
Yeah, he emerges from the bushes with a totally looking like he just took a shite. I mean, I've never been able to tell that from someone's face more, I feel like.
Which is funny because, I mean, in terms of the narrative, I don't think he did. But Matthew Fox probably just dumped a turd like right before camera.
He had explosive diarrhea that day. They called action. No. He's like, I have 15 seconds while Evangeline Lilly finds that piece of cloth.
I wonder, is it Evangeline Lilly or Evangeline Lilly?
Oh, it's Evangeline, right?
I don't really care about the anti-vax cunt. But anyway, so he trudges off back through the jungle.
Yeah, Kate implies that he's like fucking had not been sleeping. Jack loves not sleeping. For a doctor, he doesn't seem to appreciate it at all.
Dude's got too much to do to be sleeping, but she accuses him of going in circles, right? And this is part of a bigger problem. Actually, do you know what? I don't know if it's a problem in Lost, but I'm going to rant about it anyway, right? She accuses him of going in circles because he's out searching for Locke. At the end of the last episode, we're all very sad about Boone, his death, all that jazz. Jack is now fired up about finding Locke because he's the reason Boone is dead, and Jack is going to go confront him. So in his hunt, he's basically walking in circles in the jungle. Now, the problem I wanted to address is that tracking seems to be like this video game ability that some of these characters have and some of them don't. And if you don't have it, it is impossible for you to navigate in the direction of a person. Sure, you can get to different locations on the island, but if you're trying to find a person individually, I'm sorry, but unless you've leveled up enough to get the tracking skill, you ain't going to find them. Whereas Kate seems to have it because she's like of the right class or something. Can you tell? I play too many RPGs.
I guess the charitable interpretation would be, and they do imply this, that Jack is just tired as fuck. But I love the idea of the dramatic ending to the last episode. He's like, I'm going to go find John Locke. And then he gets about 4 steps into the jungle and he's like just sort of wandering around, turning in a circle on the spot. And Kate's just like shaking her head pitifully.
Like a game of The Sims. He's got stars over his head, a cloud in his face.
How long do you think he's been out here? Because Kate's sort of like, dude, you can't keep doing this, implies that it's been a while, but it can't be more than a few hours, right?
Yeah, it has to be just a few hours. But Jack straight up tells us that he blames Locke for Boone's death. And how do you feel about this, Dave? Is this like a reasonable response to take, or is he jumping the gun a bit?
He knows Locke lied. We know Locke lied. Based on the information that he has, it's not an unreasonable assumption. And the whole thing is here. I was going to bring this up later on, but I can bring it up now. Jack's ego is getting in the way of his judgment here. He had to let Boone die, which made him wah emo doctor. You know, I don't like my patients die. Okay, maybe that's just a normal position for doctors to take. But you know what I mean? Jack seems to care about the fact that he let Boone die more than he cares about Boone's actual death. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of the last episode was to really drive it home just how much the death of a patient is going to affect him. And now we know that Locke is lying about something and it's connected to Boone's death. That is putting John Locke straight in Jack's crosshairs. I mean, I get it. But we move on from that to the beach and we've got Boone's funeral. And there's sad music.
There's like a little procession. All I could notice was the ripped, nerdy red shirt. Did you see this dude?
Yeah.
He's right behind Hurley. He's this guy with like sort of a man bun and he's wearing glasses and he's wider than he is tall. Like this dude is fucking a brick shit house.
Yeah, this dude looks like he should be serving me a chai latte in Rathmines.
Yeah, right? He looks like you put a lot of effort into your coffee order.
But something I was going to mention during the trivia section, but I'm sorry, I got to mention it now. The music.
Oh,
Do you know what the name of this track is?
I couldn't even begin to.
In true Michael Giacchino Lost fashion, it is called Booneral.
If that was like an original thing that you or I said, that would be a high contender for title of this episode. That's incredible.
Oh man, I fucking love it.
I want to look at the names of the tracks on his Pixar soundtracks just to see if he's like continued the trend. That dude loves a punny title, especially for such serious and emotionally charged music. Yeah,
so this episode introduces what is Boone and Shannon's theme. I find it a bit late to introduce it considering Boone's dead now, but it is called Booneral. There is another musical track in this episode that has a kind of a funny title to it, but I'm not 100% sure where in the episode it appears.
Save it for the trivia section, lad.
I will save that much at least. So we've got Booneral playing. Everyone is looking sad. Boone is wrapped up in a tarp fresh from the farm. Jack kind of walks up, covers his face a bit, and he invites Shannon to say a few words.
And can I just say, there's a little scene here where Walt grabs Michael's hand beforehand. And you can just tell that Walt is thinking about how he never said a single word to Boone. Like Boone might as well be a red shirt to Walt. He's like, who is this dude again?
Don't you worry. I am going to be addressing that in a sec. I am going to mention a little something, a little bit of a gripe I got. So okay. Shannon very politely declines to say anything. She has no words to say at the death of her brother. And, you know, I can't blame her, right? This is an emotionally charged situation. But Saeed speaks up.
Yeah, he's trying to eulogy his way into Shannon's pants.
Exactly, right? He's trying to get deep in there. He mentions how he never knew Boone as much as he wanted to, and he's sorry about that. And he mentions how Boone tried to rescue Joanna much earlier in the season. Do you remember Joanna?
Oh, I do. That's our theorized, not our theorized, but the theory that she was chilling at the fucking Looking Glass station.
Exactly. Boone ran out to try and rescue this woman from drowning. Now, he ended up needing to be fucking rescued himself, if I remember correctly.
He did about as good a job as I did staying sober on this podcast.
But why is it that when Joanna died, no one gave a single solitary fuck? Right? But literally everyone shows up for Boone's funeral.
Maybe it's because, I don't know, it was early on and relationships hadn't been established as much.
Yeah, it was day 6.
But like, I don't remember, you know, Walt expresses later on, he's like, oh, Boone died. And I don't remember him caring half as much about Steve's death, or was it Scott?
It was Steve. He said with absolutely no certainty. But anyway, this is a mysterious island, and it is full of so many unexplained mysteries, and we can theorize on them as much as we want. But one of the biggest mysteries in this episode was why John Locke felt the need to show up and try and say a few words at this funeral, right? Which he does.
He's so like meticulously planning all the time, but he shows up and he has like he's put himself in a very difficult position by staying so secretive, because he's like, what must his thought process have been? I'm going to show up and explain myself. And then he gets there. He's like, I have no idea how to explain myself.
Exactly. Because it doesn't even sound like, you know, he's planned what he's going to say at all, because he cuts himself off mid-sentence. He's like, oh, we found a plane and he climbed it. My leg was hurt. He found a radio. Like, he's desperately trying to explain this to make himself not seem like the bad guy, and he just results in looking even fucking shiftier. And my goodness, Jack is looking at him like he is so ready to redecorate this cunt's face.
He might as well start turning green here. Fucking Hulk smash. Like, he looks, it's got to be a combination of like guilt over Boone's death mixed with overtiredness, mixed with just like a cocktail of rage and grief and fucking, yeah, he's ready to pop.
And pop he does. He marches towards John, shouting, where were you? What did you do to him? You know?
But this is like, I think I mentioned something about this earlier. I can't really remember because I've been drinking, but I don't know. I understand why he's angry, but it seems like an overreaction to me, or at least it seems like this is more about Jack than Boone at this stage. I think this is his ego getting in the way.
I still don't know if ego has anything to do with it. He sees this man as the direct reason why somebody died.
Fair enough.
He thinks John Locke is a fucking murderer because Boone dies while he's with John Locke, and now John Locke is lying about the circumstances of the death. Perfectly reasonable. We get the title screen, Lost, just zooming in, and it interrupts the fight before we come back to it. Kate, Charlie, Sawyer, they all manage to pull Jack back away, and Jack just fucking collapses.
Jack is so fucked up that even Sawyer can't get any enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, not so much as a nickname out of him or a witty fucking remark or one-liner. So this brings us to our next scene. Jack is stomping away. He's being followed by Saeed, Kate, and Son. And just to run through it, Jack just basically tells them about Boone's final words and Locke's shadiness. Mentions, you know, that Boone said something about a hatch. And this will become important later in the episode. But they don't seem to pay any real attention to it at the moment. But anyway, we go into a flashback, one of Saeed's. And Saeed is in a mosque, praising Allah, all this stuff. You've got the Imam leading service.
Those little Islamic hats, I don't know what they're called, but they're dope. They're not quite like a fez. They're shorter than those, but you know the ones I'm talking about. They're like round, but they go straight down.
Yeah, the takia.
Takia.
I don't really know how to pronounce it, but that's what it's called.
Is that research or did you just know that?
That is just on the fly Googling, my friend.
Oh, on the fly. Okay, nice.
Impressive. Yeah, spelled Taqiyah, which I'm assuming is a romanization of the Arabic script.
Those are dope hats. I like them. They're the anti-beret.
Saeed is just in this mosque doing his worship thing, and he's noticed by another member of the congregation when, they go through a certain part where they have to turn their heads from left to right. This leads us into a scene where, at the end of service, Saeed just gets up and walks out. He's come in, he's done his thing, he's done. But the dude who noticed him catches up with them out in the courtyard, and we learn that this is Essam, right? Essam is the dude that was mentioned earlier on by said CIA as Saeed's old college buddy. He recognized Saeed.
Yeah, he asked him what he's doing, Sydney. Goddamn, this dude has gorgeous eyes.
Right. Piercing. He is a beautiful man, I must say.
Yeah.
But we know that because of the conversation we saw Saeed have with the CIA, this is just Saeed being sneaky as fuck in bumping into Essam. He's like convincing Essam it was him who found Saeed.
Yeah.
Saeed asks about Zara, who is obviously Essam's former partner or daughter. I don't think the relationship is made clear, is it?
Yeah, I assumed wife, but I'm guessing it's not his daughter because he seems young enough not to have one. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good point.
Obviously, she was someone very close to Essam. He says that, she kind of died. She was hit by a stray bomb while she was out shopping for a dress.
Yeah, and this is the sort of vague, is it pro, is it anti-American imperialism? Like they're acknowledging the what would they call it? Like the collateral damage insensitively of American foreign policy.
I don't think they're really saying anything for or against it at this point in the episode. It's just a comment on, the way things were at the time.
Yeah, I can't see anything overly propagandic about it though, which is maybe unique for American media from around this time.
Which means the propaganda is either really good or non-existent.
Exactly. Yeah, I might just be drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, so Essam says to him, hey, do you know what? While you're here in Sydney, why don't you fucking come back to my place and kick it with the boys? And Saeed's like, do you know what? That's a dope-ass idea. So Saeed goes back to Assam's place and cracks open a nice, cool mug of tea because they don't drink.
Unlike us.
Yeah, they're just talking about shit, shooting the shit. Assam's two housemates are there. They're just playing a fucking video game.
What's the video game they're playing? Is that one that's been like constructed for this show? I thought it was maybe Half-Life.
This was going to be a trivia point. It is Half-Life.
Oh, sick. Okay. But the way they talk about it, they mention zombies. To my knowledge, there's no zombies in Half-Life, but I've never actually cleared a Half-Life game. So I don't know about that.
Yeah, there's like corrupted alien looking people that if you weren't, as invested in the lore of the game, you could easily just call them zombies. They've been zombified, like taken over by aliens, their bodies being made use of and controlled by the aliens who are infesting and corrupting their minds. There you go. But while they're talking and shooting the shit, Saeed is just kind of talking about himself, how he's been landlocked for years. The last beach he was at was this one, because they mentioned, why don't you come down to the beach with us and shit like this? And just while Saeed's talking, he just randomly stands up and is eyeballing their smoke detector. He takes a cigarette out of one of Essam's housemates' mouth and holds it under the smoke detector. And
no alarm.
Yeah, no alarm. And here's the thing. While this is all happening, they're all in shock. Like, oh, there's obviously something dodgy going on with the smoke detector. Is it what we think it is? During this whole interaction, Saeed is still talking about how, last time I've been to the beach was a long time ago, but now I'm here in Sydney and there's lots of beaches and lots of women and shit like that. So, but he opens up the smoke detector and takes out what is clearly a small little microphone, a bug.
Yeah, and I was thinking, even though Saeed knew about the bug, like he's obviously been instructed to do this by the CIA, the way he handled it was still pretty gangster.
Oh, tell me about it.
I was impressed, even though I knew he was working on instructions.
Do you know, the funny thing is, I never even considered that knowledge of where the bug was actually something he was instructed about.
Yeah, it has to be, right? To gain their trust.
Yeah, that makes so much more sense. But one of the guys stands up and we think Saeed's been rumbled. He says, well, maybe you two meeting each other isn't coincidence.
And we're sweating.
Maybe it is fate. So that brings us back to the beach. We've got Charlie and Son basically trying to give Claire baby advice. They're trying to tell her, listen, you've been awake a while since you gave birth to this fucking crotch fruit. You need to go to sleep. Give us the baby for a little while, get some Z's. And Claire's like a little bit hostile at this idea. She's very, like, I understand a new mother being protective of her baby, but this is mama bear energy she's given out. But eventually she comes around, gives Charlie the baby very fucking reluctantly, and
decides to have a snooze. I know you referenced this earlier in the episode, but this is the scene where Charlie refers to the baby as turnip head.
Yes, for the first of many times.
All I can think about when I was watching it is, are we ever going to refer to the baby by its real name again? I'd forgotten about the turnip head nickname.
I so prefer turnip head.
Surely that's going to become a Lost the Plot staple.
It has to. So that brings us into a scene. We've got Shannon being mopey on the beach about nothing in particular except her brother's death. And Locke rocks up.
The fucking balls on this dude. He's got Boone's fucking dried blood on him. And he still approaches Shannon. And then he sits down beside her.
Oh, that was the bit. Like him approaching her in the first place and saying, hey, this is Boone's backpack. Thought you should have it. I didn't go through it. I'm like, okay, if you want to try and win back Shannon, or like win her over again to your side, sure, this is the right first step, but your next step should be get the fuck out of there. But no, he just invites himself to sit next to her.
He has to move his massive balls aside before he does so.
But as soon as he sits down, we hear a bit of thunder rumbling and he just says, storm's coming. And I'm like, you think? Holy shit. Dude is straight up predicting appropriate rain, appropriate dramatic rain. So we know something's coming, right? But then Locke starts, man, he's just laying it on thick with Shannon, trying to win her back over. He says, I should have said no the first time Boone asked to go on a hunt with me. I should have said no, and I'm sorry, and all this shit. He says, he knows what it feels like to lose family.
Yeah, I think he overdoes it here, because when he says I shouldn't have asked Boone to go, Shannon's like, he would have went anyway. And I was thinking, okay, he's getting somewhere with her. He's getting through to her. But then he follows up with the line that he knows what it's like to lose family. And she stares fucking daggers at him. And his final words before getting up and fucking off are, I hope you can forgive me. I'm sorry. Dude, this is no. No. Asking for forgiveness at this point in time, no. Bad judgment on Locke's part here.
Yeah, give her some fucking space. So after Locke fucks off, we cut to the caves. I think it's the caves. We've got Saeed tinkering around with a little bit of electronics. And Shannon comes up to him and says, hey, you know how you wanted to do something for me? And he's like, yeah, baby girl, anything. I'd do anything for you. She's like, well, John Locke killed my brother. I want you to do something about that.
What an awkward position to be put in. Shannon sucks here, right? I mean, I know she's grieving, but I feel like I'm always, look, I want to preface this by saying I don't think that I'm any sort of paragon of emotional maturity, but I always try to look at these characters through an emotionally mature lens. And I'm like, this is not the way to go.
I am going to give Shannon a pass on this one, just because of how raw it is. Like, while she was off shifting Saeed, her brother died. She wasn't with him. She didn't know anything about him getting hurt or the attempts to save his life. She was too busy off getting with her new boy toy. So if she's not feeling too great about this whole situation,
yeah, she hasn't processed it, I guess. Proving you have more emotional maturity than me. Good job.
Oh, I sincerely doubt that. So we cut to a scene. We're on the beach. Jack and Kate, they're sitting in a little tent, hanging out, chilling. Jack is drinking some juice and he's like, okay, I've had enough juice. And Kate's like, no, drink more of the juice. And he's like, no, I don't want to drink more of the juice. She says, no, but your blood sugars. And I'm like, bitch, sit down. You are trying to advise a doctor on his blood sugar levels. All right. Can I just point out how stupid that is?
Hey, you know what? He's tired enough. I respect the balls she shows.
And this will actually tell you, or, it'll give you some idea of the passage of time since the end of the last episode. Jack is still weak as fuck and recovering from his blood donation to Boone, as well as his tiredness. That's why she's talking about, blood sugar levels. But he tries to get up and he's stumbling a little bit. He's like, oh, maybe I am still tired or whatever. And she's like, nah, I drugged you. I'll put some sleeping tablets in your juice. And Jack, for like half a second, looks as though he wants to be shocked, but he just says, okay, and nods the fuck right off to sleep. Yeah. It's brilliant.
Is this a TV thing or are sleeping pills that strong? I guess maybe if you're that tired,
yes,
they're more effective, right?
Correct. That's exactly the way it's going to be. Like if you are dog tired, you haven't slept in 24 hours, a sleeping tablet is going to be like a breeze to a feather. You are not going to be able to resist it at all.
Now, I know it's not a proper sleep you get from sleeping tablets. It's more like you lose consciousness, similar to the alcohol and the effect it's going to have on us tonight. But I think they later imply this, that Jack hasn't really gotten a proper sleep because he's, jumping ahead a little bit. When he wakes up, he's still pretty tired.
Yeah, he doesn't look fully great. But we cut from that to one of the weirdest scenes, I think, in Lost history.
Is this the one with Locke's kidney scar?
Yeah. We've got John Locke washing his shirt, but hang on. For our listeners who may not remember this scene entirely well, he's standing there with one leg propped up in a fucking George Washington crossing the Delaware pose, shirtless, and he's being watched by a very admirational Walt.
I don't know about that, though. I feel like this scene is here solely to imply that even Walt has abandoned him emotionally.
No, to me, this looks like Walt is having something awakened in him by shirtless Locke.
Locke's got a pretty ripped dad bod. Do you know what I mean? Like he's got the middle-aged belly there, but he's in pretty good shape otherwise.
He's got less of a fucking belly than I have. But anyway, so as you imply, or as you said, which is implied in the scene, Walt does seem to have abandoned Mr. Locke a little bit, right? Because he's staring at Locke, but he's backing away and he fucks off. Locke goes back to washing his shirt. When we get Saeed walking up, and Saeed questions him about his scar, and Locke says, oh, it's an old war wound.
Great. Fucking fantastic line.
And Saeed says, well, it looks more surgical to me, motherfucker. And Locke's like, as I said, war wound. So I don't know. Is that Locke getting caught out in a lie, or does Locke consider it?
I'm guessing he's referring to the emotional war that his father waged on him. I think he feels like it carries as much trauma as an actual war wound would to him. I'm guessing that's the implication.
Yeah. Do you know what? Now that you've said it, I think that's absolutely what it is. But the whole point of this conversation is Saeed is just questioning Locke about the radio that Locke mentioned at the funeral, that there was a radio in the plane that Boone was trying to operate, but it only got some static. And he just wants Locke to bring him to said plane. And Locke's like, all right, cool. So the next scene is the pair of them trudging through the jungle. I say that phrase so often on this podcast, but hey, it's nearly entirely all set in a fucking jungle. So in the jungle, Locke admits that he and Boone weren't hunting boar. Okay, this comes up in conversation because this is one of the greatest scenes in this entire series of Saeed talking to Locke in this.
It's
scene
fantastic, right? It's really like, I don't know. This scene is written by two people who really know their characters. When you can just tell that it's a really respectable piece of writing here. You can tell these characters are answering exactly the way the characters that they are established to be would answer. That was a drunk sentence, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I do. You see, the thing is, the way I sum it up is both of them are incredibly suspicious of each other, but rather than how Jack or Sawyer might handle it, basically holding them up against a tree and just asking the questions outright, these guys are playing mental and verbal chess with each other.
Damn, you're right. I didn't think about it in contrast to the sort of more bravado-esque men, but yeah, you're right.
It's so
Jack
much more
and Sawyer, for all the differences between them, they're similar in that they've got short tempers. They're men of action. Saeed and Locke, like you said, fucking 3D chess here, mind games.
Yeah, like Saeed is just making relevant small talk. Like he says, you and Boone were hunting, and Locke says, that a question? And Saeed says, yeah. But Locke goes on to explain, boar got scarce a couple of weeks back. We weren't hunting, we were exploring. And Saeed, follows up. So that was when you found the Beechcraft, the small plane that you mentioned. At the funeral, you mentioned your leg was injured. And Locke picks up on it, right? He says, you said you used to be an interrogator. Well, you haven't lost your touch.
It's the sign of a good scene, because I had written down before they even, I take the notes as I watch these episodes. Before Locke had mentioned that, I was like, here's Saeed the interrogator. And then fucking Locke says exactly that. Like, it's, yeah. I don't know if I really appreciated this enough until you pointed it out, but this is a really well-written exchange between the two of them. This is awesome.
It's phenomenal. And it's such a small scene, and I'm spending so much time on it, but I feel like I need to give it the appreciation it deserves.
It deserves it. It's a fucking fantastic scene.
But the scene ends with Locke bringing Saeed to the plane and proving that at least he wasn't lying about that.
It's funny that he doesn't really believe him when they're about 10 feet from the plane.
Yeah, he should have seen it. So we cut from that to another flashback. Saeed is playing footy with Essam.
You're pissed off with the scene for the same reason I am, right?
Because of the big, obvious Sydney Opera House in the background.
There's no way they didn't Photoshop that in there. We know they're in Sydney. That has been established. This is pure disrespect for the audience here. This is like, TV viewers are stupid. Let's put the fucking Opera House in here beside a park where there's that is probably not accurate to fucking Sydney's geography at all. I hated that. I hate that they feel fair enough. Maybe do it once, like the first time they show Sydney. But why do they feel the need to put the Opera House in there every time? It pisses me off.
It is incredibly insulting to the audience's intelligence to do this. But
awful.
Think about it, guy. Listen, I'm gonna say one thing in defense. This show was made for the average American viewer. That's all I'm gonna say.
Shout out to Lost in My 40s. Yeah, no, I get it. And it's also, we have to keep in mind the fucking era this aired in, which was, there's a decent chance that someone watching this episode had never seen Lost before. This was channel flicking culture. We don't know anything of its like now, especially people under the age of like 40 who are cable cutters. You don't just jump in on your streaming service at the last episode you watched. There are plenty of people who haven't watched this far and decided to just watch one night. Even still, I find it insulting.
But there's a really subtle thing that this episode, well, the episode as a whole does do it, right? And I'm definitely going to discuss it a little bit more later on. But this scene in particular, just showing these two lads playing football, right? It's, how do I say it? It's basically taking the notion of, I don't know, the brown Islamic terrorist, right? As portrayed to ignorant white Westerners, right? Mm-hmm. And just showing these fuckers play football in the local park. These are people. Don't forget that.
That's exactly how I felt about the video game scene. I felt it much more about the video game scene than I did about the football scene. But you're right. They established the same thing. Now, do we approve of that? Like maybe humanizing these people does take away from the hysteria around, brown people of the time.
Post 9/11 Islamic hysteria was so real. And I have conflicting views when it comes to this episode about it, right? Because it's actually all in this scene. Because this scene, Saeed and Essam, they're just playing a game of football with each other, one-on-one, whatever. But Essam says that there is going to be an operation, as he describes it, and there is going to be a martyr involved. And just from the language he's using, Saeed realizes, it's going to be you. You are going to be a suicide bomber. You have been chosen for this, right? And Essam reveals he just got the news about it this morning, right? But he doesn't think that he can do it. He can go ahead with it. And this is the problem I have. The episode tells you in this post 9/11 world with Islamic hysteria going on, people are afraid of the big, Muslim bogeyman. This episode tells you, no, they are normal people playing footsie in your park, playing Half-Life, but they're also terrorists and they live among you.
Yeah. All I can think about, the most charitable interpretation I can think of is that for the time, It was pretty progressive. It was pretty like shedding a more positive light on Islam than was common at the time. I would love to, and I feel like this is pretty unlikely, but I would love to invite one of our, if we have any listeners that are of the Islamic faith, to write in with their interpretation of this. I know we have allegedly have some listeners in Iraq or whatever. Like I would like, there's only so far we can go as two Western white dudes interpreting this from a 2022 perspective. But I think maybe this was the writers doing the best they could do at the time with trying to quote unquote humanize. And I hate to use that word because these people are human.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Based on the sort of attitude at the time, trying to humanize the struggle of these people, the humanity, display the humanity of them, maybe try to work against the dominant narrative of the time in a way that still pleased network executives. Because at the end of the day, you have to understand that this television was made in a time that no matter how progressive your views were, at the end of the day, you had to compromise somewhat with what fucking middle America wanted to see.
Yeah.
I don't know if it excuses it. I don't know if it makes it more okay than it otherwise would be, but it's the reality of the situation at the time. It's an important political conversation, not even political, just social conversation that needs to be had, and maybe we're not the guys to have it. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, did they have to do this particular storyline? Like this story isn't exactly doing wonders for the post 9/11 Islamic hysteria with its "they could be living amongst you" vibe that they're really trying to portray in this episode, which is just it's so fucking reminiscent of, you know, McCarthyism attitudes to communism.
Yeah, but you could even argue that the character of Saeed was an olive branch. It was a like admittedly wing-clipped attempt, but an attempt nonetheless by the writers of this show to push back against that hysteria, against Iraqi people in particular and Islamic people as a whole. This was, remember, 2 years into the Iraq War, where I would have to check statistics on this and polls, but I'm nearly certain public opinion had not turned as drastically as it would on the Iraq War by this time. Bush was still in office. He had just won re-election. You know, it can't have been too bad.
Yeah, I don't think it had turned that much at this point in time.
It's a really fucking interesting thing to think about. And I don't know if either you or I have the expertise or frankly, the social and racial position or cultural position, I should say, to comment on it. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about. And again, I would love to hear from any listeners who may have a better perspective than you or I.
Absolutely. I don't think there's anything else really all that constructive that you or I could contribute to that. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to continue on.
losttheplotlads@gmail.com. All I'm saying.
Please let us know. So in the name of not wanting to really, you know, talk about that anymore, we cut to Saeed talking to the CIA. He's fully spilling the beans on his friend Essam, who has revealed that he's going to be, or he has at least been chosen to be a suicide bomber. But the CIA don't really give a fuck. They just want to know where the C4, they want to know where the explosives actually are. These guys, as the CIA say, they operate on a need-to-know, top-down basis.
And there's an interesting little bit here because they talk about how they will basically arrest Nadia for being like they're basically threatening to go Patriot Act on her ass.
Yeah, like Saeed doesn't want to have anything to do with this anymore. But they say, no, Nadia is a foreign national with a history of insurgency. Be a shame if anything happened to her.
And I'd like to think, in a way, this is a small tribute to Boone's character, because do you remember that time where Hurley was collecting names for the manifest and he referenced the Patriot Act? Like, the writers are very much aware of this. They wrote into Boone this sort of protest to it. And I would muster a guess as to say the Lost writers, like most sensible people at the time, were pretty anti-Patriot Act. That was a pretty insane piece of legislation.
Oh, like the last bit of stitching in the crotch of my jocks. That is a stretch. That is a tenuous connection.
I know I'm being very charitable here, but you know.
But you never know. Possible, you know, R.I.P. Boone.
I don't think they actually meant it as a tribute. I'm just saying I can interpret it that way.
It's just a connection that you can draw, right?
Yeah.
So we cut back to the beach. We've got Charlie with the baby, little turnip head, and he's singing to the little shit.
Singing Itsy Bitsy Spider.
Yeah, and Hurley just rocks up and corrects him on the lyrics.
I appreciate it because the first thing I thought about was how wrong he got the lyrics.
So he says the Itsy Bitsy Spider climbed up the spout.
Yeah, it's water spout, right?
Down came the rain and drowned the spider out. So the way I'd always heard it was the Itsy Bitsy Spider climbed up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. So Hurley comes up and rightfully puts Charlie in his fucking place. He's meant to be the songwriter. How does he not know lyrics, right? Charlie's just complaining about, I'm just trying to get this baby to stop. Baby won't shut the fuck up. I'm just saying, dude, if you want the baby to stop crying, you're standing by a lot of water. But that option aside,
Jesus Christ.
Hurley suggests, well, maybe he's hungry. And Charlie says, no, Claire nursed him like 5 times already. And so Hurley's like, well, maybe he made a deposit in the nappy bank. Nope, kid smells fine. So then Hurley decides, all right, time to bring out the big guns.
And let me just say that this is fucking peak TV right here. Hurley and Charlie trying to get this baby to stop.
This is why I pay my TV license, right? Hurley just starts fucking singing I Got You by James Brown. Wow, I feel good.
It's fucking incredible. And I don't know if you, sorry if I'm jumping ahead here. I mean, I guess you're not going to fucking go over his entire rendition, but there's a part at the end where he goes, ow! And as he says it, there's a fucking wave crash behind him. And I just think that is the sea, right? How happy must everyone on set have been to have gotten that shot? Do you know what I'm talking about? Hurley goes like, ow! And there's a fucking, as soon as he does it, there's a massive wave crash behind him. And the timing is just, mwah.
All I could think of was the Little Mermaid on her rock. Part of your world, and the wave crashing behind her.
But the difference is that shit is animated and planned. This is fucking lightning in a bottle. The rest of that shot could have been terrible. The rest of that take. And they would have been like, okay, we need to cut around this so that we can use that fucking take with the wave, because that was epic.
But oceanic choreography aside, it does nothing for our screaming baby, right?
Nah, the baby does not appreciate the timing as much as we do.
And this is what I love about Hurley. Even the simplest of lines are just so funny. He just kind of looks at Charlie, not even defeated, just kind of like a blank face on him. And he just says, dude, that's all I got. Baby's still not having any of it. So we cut from Hurley's shit kid skills to the plane. And by the plane, I'm talking about the Beechcraft that Saeed's just brought Locke to, right? They're still doing this verbal fucking mental chess thing, right? Of still kind of talking around each other.
You love to see it.
Oh man, so good. They're discussing the possibility of the plane being used by smugglers. Locke's basically, explaining about the heroin. Saeed decides to try and salvage some of the radio that's in there. Locke questions Saeed. He's like, why don't you trust me? And Saeed astutely points out that Locke is carrying a gun and nobody knew about it.
It's hilarious that Locke asks, why don't you trust me? Because you're fucking lying, dude.
Yeah. Dude, you're carrying a gun. We thought we had all of the guns accounted for, but no, you're just carrying one no one knows about. I mean, fair fucking point. So Locke then says, this all came from the corpse that was dressed like a priest, the Nigerian currency they found on him. And he hands over the gun and says, there, does that earn me any trust? And Saeed's so fucking smart. He says, no, you handed it over because I caught you with it. That earns you adaptability. Like, fuck.
Just two boys at the top of their game. We've spoken before about the Council of Legends, which is these two lads and Jack. I mean, I feel like they leave Jack in the dust here, the two of them. They're both so fucking intelligent. And like, you think one of them is 2 moves ahead, but then the other one shows that they know what the other one was up to the whole time. It's amazing.
So after that, Locke confesses about knocking Saeed out. Do you remember this way back when? We spoiled this way back when it happened.
I cannot believe that he fucking confessed. He owns up to it.
Yeah, so for anyone who's totally forgotten about this moment, this was when Saeed was trying to triangulate the French woman's signal by getting Shannon to set up, well, it was meant to be Boone, but Boone had to fuck off and do something and got Shannon to do it. You know, setting off the bottle rockets, the fireworks.
We half knew this was coming because it was shown in the previously on Lost.
Yes, we did see that. But if you cast your mind back, Saeed got knocked the fuck out by an unseen assailant at the time, who was obviously trying to sabotage the attempt. And I say we, the audience at the time when this episode went out, had no idea who it was. But this is John Locke confessing that was him. This is where we find that out.
Which is a pretty crazy revelation, because I feel like if I was a first-time viewer, and I can't remember, obviously, what I thought at the time, pretty safe to assume it might be like one of the others or someone like that. Like, the fact that it was someone within the group of survivors is a pretty big revelation.
Yeah. I mean, we already had Ethan crop up out of nowhere, so we know there's at least one other person living and thriving on this island. You know, you'd assume it's someone from that particular group, whoever it or they may be. But Locke just reveals, I straight up sabotaged your rescue attempt and physically assaulted you in that effort. And Saeed takes the very, very logical and rational reaction of getting John Locke by the throat and pointing a gun in his face.
It's what any of us would do.
I'd have done slightly more than that, but no, Saeed is thinking clearly. He does not shoot him point blank. But Saeed then takes a moment to, he accuses him of burning the raft as well. He's like, well, if you're going to sabotage that fucking attempt, then did you burn the raft? And Locke's like, no, that wasn't me. But then Saeed begins to question him about the hatch. What's the hatch, John? And Locke decides to keep playing the game, the chess. And says, what hatch? You know, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. What hatch?
Say what you will about him. Maybe, as we find out, it doesn't get by Saeed, but Locke is a fucking good liar.
Well, here's the thing. If this was the way somebody tried to lie to me, I would believe it. But because I already know John Locke and the way, like, I know John Locke as a character now. I know how he would react if he genuinely didn't know about the hatch. And to me, this is such an obvious lie from him.
I think it was in the episode, What the Case May Be, where I talked about how Evangeline Lilly was really good at acting as a bad actor. And I feel like in this case, Terry O'Quinn plays a good actor really well. Do you know what I mean? This is, even though we know the Locke is lying, and the writers don't hide that from us at all. Like, we're fully keyed into the shite that he is talking. You can just, the look on his face is almost convincing. You almost doubt yourself. I feel like fucking great performance by Terry O'Quinn. Fucking great lie by Locke. Will it get by Saeed? It seems to.
I couldn't have said that any better. Even though we know he's lying, we'd nearly fall for it.
Yeah, 100%. He's very convincing.
And Saeed does almost, like, you see it in his face, like he's considering it. Does John not know anything about the hatch? Like Locke astutely points out, 2 hatches on an airplane. You know, is he talking about front, forward, or aft?
Again, very plausible fucking explanation. Great work by Locke.
So we cut from that to a flashback. Saeed is trying so hard now to get Essam to go through with the bombing.
Yeah, this is typical CIA MO right here, because they're trying to extort your man into maybe extort's the wrong word, but there is documented proof that the CIA have convinced Muslim men who have not been extremists into being extremists in order to extort them into arresting them. There's been some shady fucking CIA shit, and this is what's going on here, basically. Like, this is almost like a precognitive commentary on the CIA, because I don't know how much of that shit had been leaked at the time of airing, but
yeah, like Saeed clearly does not want his friend to go through with this suicide bombing, but with the prospect of finding out where his love is, yeah, he's going to convince his friend to go through with it, obviously with the hope that he's going to try and pull him out at the last second or something like that. You know what I mean?
But it's really fucked up. Again, I need to stress this. The CIA have convinced Muslim men they have sent undercover, I don't know if you want to call them agents, just undercover assets, basically, into Muslim American communities, and have convinced them to attempt to carry out attacks in order to arrest them to what end, I don't know, to put numbers on the fucking spreadsheet. This is an argument in favor of maybe this is a pretty woke fucking attitude on the CIA's actions during this time.
But the whole point of this scene is that Saeed doesn't want his friend to go through with it, but he has to convince him to do so in order to get the CIA to reveal where Nadia is, right? So he's laid it on thick.
He needs the C4 at the very least.
Yes, he needs to reveal the location of the C4. So he starts laying it on. He's like, we've all lost people. And those who took them away, like, should we just be okay with that? No, we're going to get back at them. And this is how we honor our loved ones, our lost ones, right? And Assam's like, you know what? You're absolutely right. Saeed, will you do this with me? And just for a split second, Saeed's like, oh, fuck.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah, it would have been perfect here. But do you know what? It's only for a beat. Because, he doesn't even change his facial expression or anything. He just says, yeah, absolutely, I'll do it. No problem.
Yeah, fair play to him. I mean, to his dedication to the craft of lying.
So we cut from that. We're on the beach. Shannon's rummaging through Boone's shit, I assume it is. She comes across a picture of her and him together. Saeed walks up and he's like, hey, do you want to go for a walk?
Tried and true by Charlie. Maybe it'll work.
Yeah, absolutely. And she goes for it. She says, yeah, sure, right? And he tells her that he spoke to Locke, and she's very eager about this conversation because she is very firmly not in Team Locke. And he says, you know what? I don't think Locke killed him. I don't think he meant to hurt Boone. Sure. Saeed's use of language here is very careful. He's not saying, I don't think Locke had anything to do with it, but he says, I don't think it's really Locke's fault. I don't think Locke meant for any harm to come to Boone. I think that's the way he says it, right?
Which is a very respectable position for Saeed to take, and one that we know is correct. I mean, there's a whole argument to be made that Locke's sort of selfishness and laser focus on what he perceived as his mission assigned by the island basically sacrificed Boone. But at the end of the day, if you're looking at it from a sort of objective perspective, yeah, Saeed's got it pegged here.
He said earlier on in the episode, we didn't address it, I didn't address it all that much, but he knows when he's being lied to, he said to Locke. Now, I don't know if that's actually true. Is he a fucking human lie detector? Or is it an intimidation tactic with Locke to try and get the truth out of him? But yeah, Saeed's got his head screwed on right.
I don't know if this is a bit of a spoiler, but we sort of think that Locke has convinced him, and then by the end of the episode we learn otherwise. So I think Saeed's pretty on it here.
But yeah, Shannon's not happy about it. She says, you don't get it, do you? And then just walks away, which is how I feel like a lot of irrational women are written in these TV shows. Like, you just don't get it, do you? And they just walk off and the man is just left looking confused. Like, you'd swear Saeed's about to look in the camera and just go, women, right?
Yeah, I think he'll be forgiven for a symptom of grief in this stage, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
No, I mean, as illogically as Shannon is thinking, as I said, I'm giving her a pass on this one, as long as she doesn't do anything drastic. Anyway, cutting from that, we're on the boat. We've got Jin, we've got Michael, we've got Walt. They're all working away on the boat, and I say they all. I mean, Jin and Michael are working on the boat. Walt's just there asking fucking questions.
And I mean, Michael working on this stretch. Is it me or is Jin doing about 2/3 of the work on this boat?
Well, Jin is, he's tying rope together, biting it. Michael seems to be doing something similar with less biting. But Walt's asking questions like, what if it tips over? And Michael's like, it won't tip over. It's too wide. But then Walt asks, well, what if we die? And Michael gets down. He stops what he's doing, addresses the question directly, stares Walt in the eye and says, we are not gonna die.
Very Jack answer there.
Which, if ever there was a way of convincing me that the prospect of death is very real, this is how you do it.
Yeah, right. He totally jinxed it.
Because even though he says we are not gonna die, Walt, without fucking blinking, says Boone died. Walt even asks, what if we get attacked by a shark? Brilliant. But this is where Charlie takes his opportunity to, rock up. He's got the baby. The baby is crying and cannot figure it out. He tries to ask Michael if he's got any experience, and Michael's like, I'm of absolutely no fucking help to you, okay?
Which, I don't know about that. Michael seemed to be pretty good with Walt when he was a baby, right? He's got at least a year and a half of baby experience. Again, babies are individuals. The temperament of each baby can differ, but he should have had something to offer, right?
Well, he did say, take him for a walk. That'll calm him down. But Charlie's does, say, well, I tried that. Didn't work.
Yeah, I feel like that's all he's been doing.
Charlie then goes to Jin and just says, "Where's son?" Just assuming Jin has nothing
to offer, which
he doesn't.
I don't know. Do you think
he wouldn't have been able to? Well, unless he can use some sort of impromptu sign language.
Yeah, I don't know. Consider what happens later. Maybe Jin's voice alone could have worked.
But then Sawyer comes by and he says, "Hey, Chucky, baby Huey's like nails on a chalkboard. You want to try get him to shut up?" And Charlie kind of cops what's happening here, but he's not sure.
Yeah. What I love about this little storyline is I feel like, maybe this is just me, but I feel like up until this point, I didn't feel like there was much of a B plot. And as soon as this happened, I was like, okay, so they're getting the B plot king in here. We're getting Sawyer involved. Do you know what I mean? I feel like there's always like a comedic B plot that involves either Hurley or Sawyer. And as soon as Charlie started this conversation with him, I was like, okay, here we go.
Sawyer is absolutely the right character to get in on this.
I mean, last episode he had, was it last or the one before? Maybe, I can't remember. I'm very drunk. He had the glasses B storyline, and here we go, baby.
Yeah, because he's always been so serious, gun-wielding redneck who's, ready to throw hands at the first sign of trouble and all this shit. So anything they can do to kind of bring a bit of humor into him.
Yeah,
perfect.
To sort of soften his masculinity, to paint him as this more compassionate character, I guess. They're always... It's a wonderful thing the writers do, where it's like a push and pull between Sawyer's sort of villain status and his softer side.
Yes. But after provoking Sawyer into saying just a couple more things, Charlie puts two and two together and figures out that baby Turnip Head shuts up every time Sawyer opens his mouth.
He likes that southern drawl.
I can't blame him.
I was just going to say.
So anyway, Sawyer stomps off up the beach, but Charlie runs after him, following with the baby. We cut to a scene of Jack waking up after being drugged. Kate is still there, offers him some soup, and he's like, "Oh, what's this? Fucking chloroform now?"
What do they make soup out of?
Not a clue.
That's, as far as we're concerned, they haven't had access to boar in a while, so the only thing they've been eating is fruit. Can you make a fruit soup?
It's called a smoothie.
Yeah, right. I don't know. Maybe 2005 smoothie hadn't been introduced to the cultural lexicon yet.
I'd say maybe Sun had something to do with this concoction. Who knows? Jack is very distracted immediately when he just goes to rub his neck. I didn't even notice that he did that at first until I went and rewatched it. He goes and rubs his neck and realizes, he's panicked at the absence of the key to the gun chest, or the attaché case with the guns in it. The gun case. I'm sorry. Yeah. That was what I was looking for.
And he's just like immediately and automatically convinced, oh yeah, it was John Locke. He's the villain of the day.
Yes, it is absolutely 100% John Locke. So he stomps off in John Locke's direction, comes across Saeed, briefly says where he's going and why, and Saeed says it's not John Locke. Saeed figures out that it's someone else. It was Shannon.
We cut to like a very dramatic scene of her in the piss and rain. The storm that Locke predicted has started. And here we go. We got revenge, Shannon.
Yeah, she's got the case. She's pulling the guns out. And shit is about to go down if it's raining.
Yeah.
So that brings us to a flashback. We've got Saeed walking out of a building. White van pulls up, not suspicious at all. And someone says, "Hey, Saeed, get the fuck in." Jumps in. His buddy Essam is there. And it's revealed that this is it. It's now. The operation they're going to talk about, or that they were talking about, it's going to happen now, right? And the van brings him to a warehouse where one of Essam's housemates, turns out he's like the whole fucking ringleader of this operation, basically hands them the keys to another nearby van, a couple of windbreakers with name tags on them, and gives them a slap in the ass and says, "Okay, there's your explosives. Go blow some shit up."
Peek behind the curtain here. I watched this episode right before we recorded, so I didn't pick up Saeed's mate's name tag. But Saeed's name tag says Steve, which I understand it's a bit problematic to find it funny that a brown dude has the name Steve, but it's just such a white name.
No, what is problematic is that's why you found it funny.
I guess. All right, I'll own up to that.
What I find funny about it is that the name badge is upside down.
Is it?
Yeah.
Did you catch his buddy's name tag? Because I didn't catch that, and I was pretty on the clock watching this episode before we recorded. So
no, I did not see what that was about at all. I didn't see the name badge.
Damn, you think that would have been a bit of trivia?
So Saeed and Essam, they get in the truck. They're ready to head off and blow some shit up with the explosives in the back. And Essam is getting so pumped for this, but Saeed's just like, dude, I'm working with the CIA.
Yeah, he straight up owns up. I mean, Saeed gets him before that. He gets him to like, he's like, I'm gonna give you a head start, and then he has to explain himself. But yeah, essentially, he owns up to his shit.
Yeah, Essam's in shock. He's so taken aback at the fact that he was being used so that Saeed can find a woman.
Am I wrong to have read some sexist tones in this?
Maybe because he was doing all of this so that he could, I presume, like, go to the afterlife and see his loved one, or do it in honor of his loved one at the very least. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too rationally, but he doesn't have a chance to see his dead loved one again, whereas Saeed is doing this so he can see his.
I thought that too. I thought Saeed had a reasonably good case. I could understand why emotionally maybe his mate would be like, fuck you, dude. But
if anyone could understand this, it would have been Essam, right?
It's a utilitarian argument.
Completely. So Essam decides to do the incredibly logical thing upon finding out this betrayal and decides to pull a gun on Saeed and then use it on himself, unfortunately.
Okay, I'm so glad you pointed this out. Why the fuck did this dude kill himself here?
I have one weak contribution.
I'd love to hear it because I'd love to think there was a good reason for this. This seems like melodramatic writing to me.
Well, what was his other option? Walk me through it. If he wasn't going to kill himself, what happens next logically?
Well, Saeed offered him the chance to run, right? Now, I see what you're saying. Maybe death was preferable to a life on the run. I think that's about the only plausible explanation, right?
That's what I would have said. Or, the only other option is that, okay, I mean, it's Essam that's behind the wheel. He still continues off to do the job, but Saeed's just going to try and stop him and botch the attempt.
The world we lived in then and now, I can't tell if it's more so now or more so then, but if you have the CIA on your ass, there's not a lot of point in living, really.
No.
You're going to be in hiding at the very least for the rest of your life.
So Essam blows his own brains out, unfortunately. Bit late to put in a trigger warning. Anyway, we cut from that to the jungle. We're in the present day. We're in the jungle. We've got Saeed, Kate, and Jack. They're running after Shannon, and they come across a very peaceful and serene John Locke.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that this is the moment where I thought, okay, they've backed themselves up here. Remember earlier I pointed out that sleeping pills don't give you a real sleep, and Jack sort of stumbles here, and I'm like,
oh, do you know what? I was wondering why Jack stumbled.
I don't know if this is intentional, but it is consistent with the pharmacology, I guess you call it, of sleeping pills. They don't give you a real sleep. They just, much like the alcohol that has inebriated myself tonight, which I'm about to take on air, the last sup of, excuse me.
A sip is a sup.
Officially out of alcohol. But yeah, Jack realistically should not have been full of energy here.
And he wasn't.
Exactly. He had an induced sleep, an induced unconsciousness, and he collapses here. And you got to respect, again, I don't know if it was intentional, but you got to respect the writers here for not making him like completely rejuvenated based on being drugged, essentially.
I fully agree. It is such a small detail, but it does deserve that level of recognition.
Yeah, I agree.
What I mean by they come across a serene John Locke in the rain in the middle of the jungle, he's just standing there with his arms out in like a, holy Jesus pose, right? But then they all just shift their gaze slightly to the side and they see, oh, he has his hands out because Shannon's pointing a gun at him. How long has Shannon actually been pointing the gun at him before they show up?
It's got to be a while, right? She's, she's clearly scared to do this. She clearly doesn't want to, but her psychology won't allow her to think otherwise.
Shannon has the gun on Locke, and all Locke says when they show up is, she doesn't believe me, Saeed.
And Jack gives this, like through his tiredness, he gives this look at Locke like he's an absolute piece of shit he's just found on his boot.
Yeah, but unfortunately, Shannon's still aiming that gun like she blames this man for her brother's death and she is going to do something about it. She's not thinking this rationally or logically at all. Saeed even says it to her. You're not thinking rationally. And Shannon just doesn't give a fuck. She's like, my brother's dead. Someone's going to pay.
Yeah, great assessment by Saeed. Not necessarily the best thing to voice aloud.
But you can see Saeed start to shuffle as he's looking at the gun. Like he's getting ready to try and grab it out of her hand while she's distracted with her proclaims of, what did you do to him? What did you do to my brother? She's shouting at Jack, like, you told me he was a liar. Like, this is why I'm doing this. And while this is all happening, you just see Saeed. He's kind of like a cat ready to get on the kitchen counter. He's just doing that little butt shuffle. He's getting ready.
If he hasn't been in this exact position before, he's been in an essential position. I mean, they don't discount his fucking army training and experience here. It's good writing in this episode overall.
So Saeed decides to take the shot. He lunges at Shannon. Piss poor attempt to get on the rugby team, by the way. Because Shannon gets a shot off and clocks John in the fucking head.
Ooh, yeah. First of all, Saeed and Shannon have one of the most unique breakups in history here. Like they broke up because he basically pushed her out of the way of a fatal shot she was going to make. But yeah, no, it's very clear here that the island wants Locke alive.
She doesn't recognize this, but he just did her a huge favor.
And he did Locke a huge favor as well, because this shit grazes his temple. Like you couldn't have a more lucky shot, really. He falls on the ground in pain. You're convinced for half a second that she might have dished out that fatal shot, but he has enough life in him to put his hand to his head to feel the damage.
And that's all he does. I would have been Peter fucking Griffin if that happened to be like,
yeah, he's bleeding quite a lot for a fucking graze. Like he's got
I'd be screaming, thinking I was fucking dead. But we need to give a bit of recognition to Jack in this scene. The look he gives John Locke.
Again, like he's just a piece of shit that just wiped off they just scraped off his boot.
It's like this wordless statement of, that bullet should have killed you and I wish it did. So we cut from that. We're on the beach. We've got Sawyer reading magazine ads to the baby in Charlie's arms with his fucked up glasses on. This is a fucking picture of a scene. I love
that's
it.
That's amazing. He's reading like, I don't know, like it sounds like an advertisement almost, or at least like a promotional piece for some kind of fucking vehicle.
Some piece of machinery. Hold on, I have it here in front of me. The 32 valve V8 engine purrs as the transmission clicks down a gear. And the vehicle unleashes 400 horses and 350 pounds per feet of rear wheel torque. Fuck, I couldn't even read that straight, man. The drink is hitting me. But
it's some sort of proto like sponsored content for a fucking car company, basically.
And the baby loves it. Baby doesn't give a shit what he's reading. The baby's just like all about Sawyer's voice and is keeping quiet. It's so adorable.
To be fair, Sawyer, I don't even know if I'd say this about his speaking voice, although it is charming, but Sawyer's reading voice is fucking top notch. Like I would listen to an audiobook read by Sawyer.
Yeah. And Claire comes up and she's a little bit, what are you doing with my baby kind of way. But Charlie's like, no, sit down. Just watch what's happening here.
Claire just rolls with the punches here.
Yeah, but Sawyer has no choice but to. He's being held hostage by this baby. He can't go anywhere. Well, he's being held hostage by Charlie, essentially.
Yeah, and I mean, you phrase him that way, but Sawyer's remaining here and doing what needs to be done is a choice, and you got to respect him for it. It's a very sweet scene.
Exactly. If Sawyer wanted to just get up and walk away, he could so do that. But
it's not his problem. It's really Charlie's problem, but he chooses to help with it. And it's character growth, whether it's highlighted by the writers or not.
So we cut from that. We're still on the beach, but it's nighttime now. Sun has set. Shannon's just moping by the fire. Saeed is looking at her wistfully, and Kate comes over, sits down next to him and says, she just needs time. But Saeed says, you know what? I don't think time's really going to make much of a difference in this,
I would say it's a moment of weakness for Saeed. I mean, you always want to believe that time will heal all wounds, but when you doubt that, that is a moment of cynicism.
Or in the words of the great and wise philosopher Groucho Marx, time wounds all heals.
Yeah, right? Like, this is Saeed resigning to the fact that he may never get pussy.
But not only that, he makes the point that maybe he made a mistake. Yeah, and Kate responds, you couldn't let her kill Locke. Like, you didn't have a choice in that, right? Letting her kill Locke was not an option.
It's an example of one of these, like, in a lot of ways, Lost is very run-of-the-mill TV for the time, but it's got these moments of very realistic humanity to it, where you almost respect. I feel like you almost don't see it in a lot of TV these days, where it's like sometimes grief is illogical and it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't resolve into attitude that does make sense. It just stays fucking irrational.
But Saeed finishes off the scene by saying there's always a choice. And that is so meta. Like, sure, he had a choice to let Shannon kill Locke or not, but she also had the choice as well to fucking pull that trigger or not. I feel like there's more to that comment. But we're in the home stretch now. We're near the end. We cut from that to another flashback scene. We're still in the same warehouse with the vans and the C4. Sam has just blown his brains out, but the CIA and the cops are all still there. They're there now, collecting all the C4, and they're making good on their promise. They revealed that Nadia she's in the United States. She's in California. They give Saeed the exact location. And Saeed is now pressuring them on what happens to Essam's body. And the tall Aussie cunt comes over and says, well, since there's no one to claim him, he's going to be cremated. And Saeed says, a Muslim man needs to be buried in the ground. And because of the plane ticket that's just been shoved into his hand for an oceanic flight, I might add, he's not going to be around to claim it. So he demands that they change his flight and he'll claim Essam's body. And they decide to do what the old fucking fortune-telling charlatan that Claire was talking to wouldn't do, which is change the flight. He was very insistent it had to be that oceanic flight.
Yeah, it's an interesting concession. It's again, me and you, neither of us are all that sympathetic to religious tradition, but it's nice in this case that Saeed insists on it, because
I am no. I am incredibly respectful of religious tradition as long as it doesn't like hurt anybody.
In the face of logic.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, even if it flies in the face of logic, let people do whatever the fuck they want to do if it's good for them, as long as it's not being shoved down my throat. Or
I agree. Perhaps, yeah. I admittedly, I might have misphrased there. I'm drunk. I'm going to use that as an excuse. But,
to take the very Irish way of seeing it, as long as it's no fucking skin off my nose, I couldn't give a bollocks.
Saeed acts in respect of this dude's wishes here. But this is a reasonable request by him. It's fulfilled, and additionally it writes his destiny.
It does. And did you know this before this episode, that cremation is frowned upon in Islam? Because I did not.
Yeah, if I knew it before, I had forgotten about it. But by the time I watched this episode, I didn't know. So that was a nice little education for me. And I feel like now that we've gotten to basically the end of this episode, I feel like overall the writers were pretty. And again, I want to emphasize, especially for the time, pretty respectful to the Islamic, maybe not fundamentalist position, but the position of someone who U.S. foreign policy has negatively affected, who the civilians that suffered from United States foreign policy, from the wars in the Middle East. I'd like to think that maybe the writers, as much as they could, were pushing an anti-imperialist view here. And maybe that's just me imposing my own politics on it, but I don't know. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt in this case. It also could be because I'm drunk.
Yeah, possibly, but that's a good way of looking at it. I like that view. We cut from that into our final scene of the episode. We're on the beach. It's nighttime. Locke is by the fire. Saeed comes up to him and asks about his head, just to start off conversation. Another war wound, he comments, in reference to Locke's previous comment.
Nice little callback. Pretty funny.
Yeah, like these two they're never not playing the game, are they? Locke, then he shows some sort of recognition towards, the strained relationship between Shannon and Saeed. It's kind of implied here that they've broken up, right? He recognizes it for having saved his life. This is a result of his life being saved. And Saeed says it's because he thinks Locke is their best chance of survival on the island, but he sure as shit does not trust him as far as he could throw him, and he couldn't pick the cunt up off the ground. And now he wants to know about the hatch. And Locke again tries to play the old move of, hatch? Like what hatch?
I had to put in my notes earlier on that when Locke plays ignorant about the hatch at first, and he says Boom is obviously referring to the hatches of the plane. I had written down that damn Locke convinces him, but then this scene made me realize Saeed's on this fucking shit. Like he knows well Locke is talking shit.
Saeed is making good on his statement earlier that he knows when he's being lied to. So he confronts John. No more lies. And then boom. End of episode.
We're done. Premature before you even ask the question here. What an episode.
I feel like we've already given our overarching thoughts on this episode a lot, but what are your final thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have much more to say beyond what I've said, especially because I'm drunk and finding it difficult to formulate new thoughts. But, this is a fucking great episode. I think I thought this when I was sober. Who knows what that guy really thought? But like, just compelling the whole way through. There was no missteps in this episode. It's no superfluous scenes. Like, it was a really good. We even dealt with the fallout of Jack's ego from the previous episode.
Yes.
Despite the fact that our main focus was on Saeed and Locke, we had our B story with fucking Sawyer is always best used in a B story. I'm not saying that his A stories are bad, but like, when you got a B story that includes Sawyer, it's always going to be fun. This was a fucking great episode. The writers of Lost have been great the last few episodes. They haven't really put a foot wrong. If they have, it's been compensated for with the rest of the episode. We have a good run of episodes in the second half of this season.
Well, I feel like we've already done a lot of discussion already in this episode with regards to the story's A plot on Saeed and his buddy Essam and the terrorism thing and all that jazz. I want to touch on another little thing in this episode, right? So in the past, we have taken the proverbial piss out of Shannon for being such a useless cunt this season, but I am fucking loving her in this episode. Maggie Grace is given a massive opportunity to shine, like especially when she confronts John Locke. She has that deranged but emotional revenge psychopathy just down to a T.
Interesting.
There's so much more depth to her here emotionally.
Do you think?
Where was it? I was reading a review of this episode. I think it was like IGN or someone, and they like the exact quote they used was, "Her quest for vengeance is so believable." And yes, it absolutely is. It just rings so natural and true for me.
I don't know if I can disagree with you.
She's lost in her grief.
Yeah, I don't agree full-heartedly. I feel like she might have been better served by a Shannon-focused episode as opposed to a Saeed one. I feel like there's a universe where this episode was a Shannon episode that illustrated her attitude towards this death.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the writers did a disservice to her by focusing on Saeed, but
I'm sure they could have done.
Yeah, I feel like there's a profound storyline there that they could have written. They could have maybe linked it back to some grief in her past. Again, I'm not a fucking TV writer. I'm not no expert on this, but I understand Shannon's character motivations, and yet I feel like there's something the writers could have done to sympathize us more to her position. And yet, you and I, as omniscient Lost rewatchers, we know that Saeed is probably a better character to choose overall.
Yes.
For a flashback episode. We get a Shannon flashback episode next season. I don't remember any specifics about it. I know we get one, but in the overall scope of Lost, with apologies to anyone who hasn't watched it, this is a spoiler, Shannon doesn't figure into the overall important storyline.
No.
Saeed's arc lasts till the very last season. Shannon's does not last as long. I can't say it any clearer than that without spoiling it. It's
like, sure, there's probably a version of this episode where it does focus on Shannon conceivably, and we see the transition of her going from sad to angry, if you want to break it down in 5-year-old terms, right? This transition of grieving her brother to wanting revenge on Locke. Sure, I could see that happening, but on a grander narrative scale, it works better for the show. It benefits them more in the long run to spend this episode putting a bit of legwork into developing Saeed more.
100% agree.
So with that, how do you feel about some trivia?
Dude, I'm drunk as fuck, and I just want to get through this.
All right. So we're going to bull through this. So do you remember I said the trivia section comes with a little caveat, a little bit
Yes,
of a warning?
You were gonna propose a sort of alternative theme. To the
No,
trivia section.
not really. This is going to be the trivia presented as it always has been. The only difference here is I had to scrape to get some shit. There was nothing really on this. So unfortunately, I know you said before, and we've discussed this privately off mic, that maybe we don't include trivia that will reference future episodes.
Yeah, just because I think it will be better served in that future episode.
I do agree with this. However, these trivia points will actually serve this episode better. So here we go. Some of these are going to be a bit shit. Some of them are better than others, whatever. So first trivia point, an apparent continuity error arises when Shannon is shown to know the location and purpose of the Halliburton case key, when only Kate, Locke, and Jack, around whose neck it was kept, had been shown to have this knowledge.
Oh, I didn't pick up on that at all, but you're dead right. They made a point of keeping this secret among a certain number of characters.
Now, here's what I mean by slightly spoiling a future episode. It's not until season 3's episode Expose that we find out the reason. Kate had earlier let this information slip when defending the measures taken to secure the guns. Not to spoil what happens in Expose, but it does take place during the events of season 1.
Yeah, there's a few on-island flashbacks in the episode. I feel like maybe that was the writers trying to clean up maybe oversights that they had mistaken before.
100%, without a doubt.
But I gotta say, I respect that, right? If there's some major plot holes and you tastefully cover them up and retread them and sort of address them, which I feel like from my vague knowledge of Expose, that episode, that is what they did. Yeah, fuck it, why not? I'm on board.
Yeah, absolutely. Next trivia point. We'd already actually mentioned this. The video game being played in SM's apartment is indeed Half-Life.
Yeah. Have you played Half-Life or any of the Half-Life games?
I have played a solid amount of the first Half-Life game, but I never completed it. Next trivia point. When Turnip Head is screaming on the beach, Sawyer calls him Baby Huey. Baby Huey is a gigantic and naive infant duckling cartoon character from the early 1950s. Cultural reference there for you.
Okay. Was he from a property? Like, what was Baby Huey featured in? Is what I'm wondering. Was it a show called Baby Huey?
Yeah, from what I can gather, I think it was like comic books and it was its own TV show. It wasn't like Disney or anything like that.
So Sawyer's got the weirdest cultural references.
No.
You can totally tell they're from writers who grew up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, right? Like,
yep. Next one. When Saeed is picked up by his buddies in a white van, the building he walks out of has the number 815 on it.
Oh, shit. I didn't see that at all. Awesome.
Yep. Not one of the numbers, but Oceanic 815, right? Next trivia point. While construction on the raft continues, Walt asks Michael a series of questions, such as, what if someone dies? Referring to the recently deceased Boone, maybe. He also asks, what if we get attacked by a shark? In season 2, episode 2, Adrift, the survivors of the raft explosion are attacked by a Dharma shark.
Nice. I had completely forgotten about that.
I fucking love that one. Next trivia point. After failing to convince Jack to rest, Kate spiked his juice to make him sleep. We find out in the episode I Do that Kate also drugged her husband in this manner when she decided to leave him. I've got a couple of little goofs, which you know I love me some goofs.
You love goofs.
So first one, when Saeed points the gun at Locke by the plane, we hear him thumb the hammer. The gun he's pointing is a Glock and does not have a hammer.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I thought about that.
That's a very common fuck up this show makes. But I feel like they're doing it deliberately because it's just TV shorthands to show, you know, he's not just pointing the gun, shit's real. Mild inconsistency, I guess. Saeed is seen in Heathrow Airport in London being escorted by 2 soldiers. Security at Heathrow would normally fall under the provision of the Metropolitan Police.
All right.
It'd be 2 fucking bobbies bringing them to an interrogation room.
It felt wrong to me. I don't know that I would have attributed it to that exact reason, but I was like, this doesn't feel right.
Final trivia point. At the warehouse, Haddad gives both Saeed and Essam jackets to wear in order to appear convincing in the bomb vehicle. The name tag Steve on Saeed's jacket is originally pinned on upside down and remains so when he enters the van. Moments later, it is corrected with no interference from Saeed.
Do we ever get a name on Sam's?
I scrubbed through it. I couldn't find it. That was my final bit of trivia / goofs. But the last thing I wanted to mention, I already have mentioned it at the beginning of this episode, was the music, how we got the tune Booneral.
Amazing.
The soundtrack also includes, from this episode, a variation of Locke's theme titled Shenanigans or Shenanigans. Shenanigans, whatever you want to pronounce that.
These are borderline insensitive, considering the character deaths.
Music for the most emotionally crippling or tense scenes, and are given titles like Booneral and Shenanigans.
Shenanigans.
Fucking ridiculous.
Shout out to Jake, you know. There's a reason why these days he's one of the most successful in the business.
And that's it. That's the end of the episode.
What a journey. I'm not gonna lie though, I'm drunker than I've ever been on mic before.
And it is a pleasure to hear from you, my friend. I can't say I'm too far away from it myself.
Yeah, my speech is slurred. The edit for this one is going to be fun because there's going to be many sections I don't remember. But hey, thank you for tuning in, listeners. Thank you for sticking with us this long.
Thank you so much. And hopefully you join us for the final furlong of this season. We're in the home stretch now. Only an amputee's handful of episodes left to go until the end of this season. Check us out on all of our social media. Links are in the description of wherever the fuck you're finding this. We got a link tree. You know the drill. Full credits are coming up. But before we go anywhere, Dave, I'm going to pressure you once again, like we do every week. What is your theory this week?
My theory this week is that Charlie didn't try singing "You All Everybody" to the baby to calm it down, because it probably worked on his brother's kid, his nephew, but he just didn't want to admit that his brother was right about anything.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Don't forget to like and subscribe, share the podcast with any Lost fans in your life. And once again, big thank you to our brand new sponsor, Angelina John Van. God bless you. May Jesus shine a light on your life. Stay tuned for the credits, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. So good night from me.
And from me. God damn it, I am way too drunk.
Let's do this again sometime. Good night.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Woohoo! Lost the Plot is produced by Dave and I. Artwork by Jimmy Purcell of BeanBetterComic.com. Music by Noel Brennan of No Exit. Check out No Exit wherever you stream your music. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LostThePlotLads, or email us at losttheplotlads@gmail.com.